start the build, the first thing we need is the printed part, of course. So this is the Z drive module. This is one of the front modules. The rear one looks slightly different. The next thing we'll need is a bunch of pulleys. So here we have a 16 tooth 6 mm pulley, a 20 tooth 9 mm belt pulley, and an 80 tooth 6 mm belt pulley. So these two pulleys are going to be the primary power production gears. So this is going to be powered by the stepper, and this is going to drive the ATT, which in turn will then transfer power to the 20T, and then go through the idlers and then go up to the Z idler on top. Then we need two idlers. We need, both will be 9 mm. We need one smooth one and one tooth one, 20T again. The next thing is some bearings. So these bearings would go in here. So one bearing to the second one and the third one. So 3 bearings. Then the 60 mm pin. So the 60 mm 5 mm pin, or 5 mm diameter pin, is the one that's going to go here. So this is where we will have both these pulleys going in. Then we have the 30 mm pins, which are going to go here, and this is where the idlers will sit. So one will sit lower and one will sit higher up. So we have 2 of those pins. And then we need some heat sets. So I'm going to be using the slightly longer versions compared to what we use in typical voron builds. So the slightly longer M3 heat sets. So 3 of them in the rear, not 4, 3 for this one. Only the rear one has 4 here. This one has 3. And then of course 2 in the front. And then some screws. So we have 6 35 mm M3 screws and 1 8 mm M3 screw, and then the closed loop belt, so which goes between these two, or rather these two. Yeah. And then we need some shims. So I'm going to be using printed ones. So I've printed some 1/2 mm shims and some 1 mm shims. So we're going to use these. And of course we'll need a NEMA 17 48 mm stepper. So I'm just going to use some generic brand one for this. Yeah, so these are all the stuff you need, and now let's go ahead and try to put them all together. So before we start the assembly, maybe we take a quick look at what tools we'll be needing. So we'll need a set of hex keys. So we basically need 2.5 mm one and the 2 mm one. It's always nice to have a plier of some sort with you. And I'm going to use this snap-off blade. I'll tell you what I'm going to use it for later, but yeah, I find it useful to have something thin and rigid enough to push these spaces in when needed. Okay, so I went ahead and inserted all the heat sets. I have a soldering station somewhere else, so I went ahead and did it there. I'm sure there are many methods of doing this. I have no particular method to do it, really. Just heat up the soldering iron and insert them in. So you could start with either the idlers or the main shaft. So we're going to go with the main shaft for now. So let's start assembling them. What we're going to do is insert one of those 625 bearings. And once you're done, you start putting in the shaft. Okay, at this point I'm going to also insert the bearing on this side so that I don't forget for later on. Alright. So both of them are in. So let's start by putting in the shaft, and then you're going to add the spacers through. So in the CAD, it says add 1 mm spacer, so at each point. So basically add one here, then the pulley, then add one more, the bearing, one more, the pulley again, and one more bearing. But I also noticed that the pulley in the CAD is 20 mm, while the pulley I got was 19. So I'm gonna use 2 spacers for this one. So I'm gonna add one more. Just got lost in there. Let's try it again. I think it is in there, so let's go ahead and put in our 9mm 20-tooth pulley. So the next thing we'll do is add another spacer on here. So this is a bit fiddly and must be coming pretty close to the cam. So you're probably losing focus by now in the footage. But yeah, it's a quite a fiddly process. I'm gonna put another bearing on there. I'll bring it down nicely in. Alright, so these printer spaces are really snug, so the shaft actually gets really tight. So I'm just gonna use this plier to push it through. Then I'm gonna add one more pulley. Of course, you could compensate for this when you're printing them to make sure they don't get that snug, but I did not. So you're gonna have to do this. Next thing, you're gonna put in the 80 tooth. So when you're putting this in, just make sure you have the belt also attached to it, because you can't put it in afterwards. Just let's push it back a little bit, and then try to get this one. Oh wait, the question, yep, not the one. So let's try and get this one in. I think this is in the right place. Let's just check. Let's try and push this in again. The fact that we're not able to tells me it's not aligned up correctly. Okay, that is better. So now for the final spacer on this one, put it in, and this is where I'm going to use the cutoff knife to try and push this towards the center. And I don't know if this is working, let's see. Okay, the problem with the cutoff knife is this lock broke, and now I'm having a bit of a hard time. So use one with the lock is not broken. So let's see if we can see the bearing from here, but we can't see much, so which means it's not near the center yet. Oh, actually, I can see the bearing. Sorry. Yep, it is, or rather, I can see the spacer, so which means it is lined up well enough. I think. Perhaps we should double check with a more powerful torch. Yep, it's in there. I can see the red. Okay, so which means we can continue pushing the shaft in fully. And that's it. So the main, well, it's not pushed in enough. So for this, perhaps it just makes sense to use another shaft and try and push it in a little further. That is not working. Let's see. Let me hold this. The shaft isn't long enough. Alright. Yeah, so let's just use this file and try to push this in. Alright, there you go. I pushed it in. It is all the way in, and I think that is about right. Everything. Oh wait, I haven't tightened the nuts, so we need to tighten one of the set screws. So let's try lining this up reasonably. I think that's lined up well enough. Let's try to tighten this one. Yep, that is good. This is done. Let's do the other one. snug, we can tighten the remaining ones later. It probably is good to put a little bit of a lock light on these set screws to make sure they don't come off. But yep, at this point, everything should be snug. There should be no visible spaces anywhere between the two pulleys, because you don't want them being able to move around. I mean, if they loosen up, they will move around. So these spaces prevent that from happening, and the pin must move smoothly on the bearing, and that's what the spaces also do. They make sure they connect these to the bearing, so it's like one big piece with the shaft which moves correctly. Okay, so that is done. So let's go ahead and do the idlers. So we have two sets of idlers, or rather two idlers to put in, and this one is the opening for the lower one, and this is for the one above that. So the lower one would be a tooth idler, and the one above that is going to be a smooth idler. So let's go in and start this. So here we're going to be using 1/2 mm shims, or you could, for the other one, you could just buy one size shim, 1/2 mm, and then just double them up when you need 1 mm. Since I printed mine, I could print the correct diameter I needed, or correct width I needed. Okay, so this is in. So let's try and get the idler in. Maybe easier from the other side. Okay, I need to push it back a little. Okay, once it's in place, let's try and get the pin inside. Okay, now I need to put another one on the side. Once again, try to push it in. Hopefully this works. Let's see. I must also say these print spaces are not super precise. But yeah, anyway, let's see. Or maybe I should put it on before inserting the pulley. Let's try that instead. So let's see, let's go back, put the shaft in. I already built one of these, so it's kind of embarrassing. I don't remember how I did it, because I must have learned something. This should be 1/2 mm, so let's see, let's put this in. And try to insert this again. Yep, that makes it better. We should now be able to push it through the entire way. That is really tight. That's not good at all. Okay, perhaps the spacer was slightly larger, but then again, these are plastic and should wear into shape. Well, I'll see how it goes, but I think it should be fine for now. So next we're going to use the other 30 mm shaft. Start inserting that. And it's the same process, a 1/2 mm spacer on one side. Alright, so 1/2 mm spacer. And this time we're going to be using a smooth idler. Let's go ahead and put. Well, I'm just checking if maybe it's a bit too big. It is a tad too big, but I think it should wear out, but let's see. So let's try to get this one in. That doesn't seem right at all. Let's see. To see first where it is. Let's hope none of the spaces have fallen out. This is this. That doesn't look right at all. Okay. Let's pull this out again and see what's happening. Okay, let's try that once more. Okay, so that one is in. Oh wait, it just popped out. Strange. Okay, so let's try putting this one in again. Strange. What is happening here? This shouldn't be this difficult. Let's see, where are we now? It's gone straight to alignment. Let's try to bring it back. Why won't this? Oh, true, it's so strange. Okay, let's see this. So no, it shouldn't be that difficult to push it through. Alright, somehow by accident it seems to align itself, so the pin now goes through. And then let's push it all the way through. And there you go. The second idler is in. So we have the smooth idler, the tooth idler, the main reduction gear shaft. Everything is in. So now the only thing left to do is put in the stepper or install the stepper. So for the stepper, we're going to need a 16T 6mm pulley. So I'm going to put that on in. Again, you might want to use thread locker and all these head screws. I'm not using any at the moment. I'll definitely put thread locker in before it gets assembled in the final system. So, as you might see, I also changed my Allen key for this one with this handle, which makes it a little easier as well. The reason being my hands are very slippery today. I had to put some moisturizer because all that handling of acetone without wearing gloves has caused my skin to go extremely dry. So let's see if this one is going in correctly. It is not. Oh, I wasn't expecting to spend this much time on this step, but yep, that's where we are. Okay, I think it is going in correctly. It just needed to be pushed in a little. That's good. Let me take the final screw, the final 35mm screw. Let's see if that goes in. imagine well as well. So the last 3M3 into 8 screw is what we'll have to put in now. But for this, we'll have to use the Allen key, otherwise it's not going to go through. Right, so we have the motor mounted. Of course, there's going to be some fine-tuning required. I mean, the belt, adjust the belt tension, push it out as much as required, and then go ahead and tighten all the screws. Hopefully these are aligned. I think they are, but yeah, you might want to double check that the alignment is right. The belt moves nice and centered. And of course, like I said before, you might want to put some thread locker on all the set screws. So the final part of the assembly is going to be putting in these screws. So I don't know what they are for, but I'm going to guess that putting these screws in is going to tighten, compress the plastic, and maybe put pressure on these walls, and which in turn would hold the pins in place. I'm assuming that's the reason for them. Yeah, I'm not completely sure though. And we're done. So that is the Z module assembly. At least these are the front one. The rear one is slightly different. At least the shape is slightly different, but the assembly is pretty much the same. The only thing to keep in mind is the length of your pulley. If it is shorter, you might want to add in an extra spacer. So let's look at the other one. So this is the rear one. So as you can see, there are differences. The main thing being the thickness of this portion. This is a bit shorter, or not as thick as this one. So you want to use 30 screws instead of the 35s we used here. But these still remain 35. It's just these will change. The 3 that we used to mount the motors change to 30 And I have then finished the assembly of all 3 modules, so we can move on to the remaining sub-assemblies of this build.